This is episode 46 of the 99 Forever podcast. I'm Eric Friesen, and joining me tonight to recap Game 1 and 2 of the Edmonton Oilers' first-round series against the Los Angeles Kings is an Oilers fan from Stockholm, Sweden, Kim Ulfstrom. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you taking the time to break down these games, especially with the time difference. Do you normally wake up in the middle of the night to watch the Oilers games, or is it a little easier for you to record them and watch it the next day?
You know what? I don't really get into recording and watching the next day because I like following along on Twitter and like seeing what people write and all the emotions going on right there and then. So I usually go up for not all the games, but a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about watching sports live that's just, you can't replace it, right? I mean, there were many years where I worked evenings at my job, so I had to record a lot of Oilers games and watch them after it was already over. And you can try to pretend like you're watching it live, but there's something about actually seeing it as it's happening that you really can't replace, I think.
Yeah, and I can't really keep my hands from the phone, and I don't want to be spoiled with the results.
So, exactly, that's a tough thing. I always had to turn my phone off because I knew that I would either see something pop up on my phone or a friend would be texting me an update. So it was tough to do that. But thankfully, it was during the decade of darkness for the most part when I was working all those evening shifts. So I'd get home from work at 10 or 10:30, and I'd usually watch them, lose a 5-1 game to Anaheim or something. So thankfully, those days are those days are past us now, and we're talking about happier times now that we're in the playoffs. But before we get into breaking down more of the playoffs so far, I'd just like to hear a little bit about your own background as an Oilers fan. So when did you first get interested in hockey, and how did you become an Oilers fan living in Sweden?
Yeah, so you know what? As you said, I live in Stockholm, Sweden now, but I grew up much further north of here in Sweden, in a little place called Boden. And up there, it's only about hockey, not so much about like soccer or football, as we call it. So just like being from there, we had a team playing in the next highest division, and just 30 minutes from our city, it was a much bigger city with a team in SHL, or Elite Serien as it was called back then. So it just came naturally, like going to hockey and so. But being an Oilers fan is another story. It's actually the team 30 minutes from our city called Luleå Hockey had a player called Linus Omark, as I'm sure you know of, Oiler legend Linus Omark.
Mm-hmm.
So back in, I think he was drafted in like 2007 or something, and started playing in Edmonton 2010. And
I remember the first game he played with the Spinorama shootout winner against the Tampa Bay Lightning in December of 2010.
That's what made him a legend.
Well, even before he played that game, he was sort of a YouTube sensation. I can remember back watching videos of him in 2009 of moves that he was pulling off in the Swedish league or on the international stage. And I just was thinking, like, man, this guy, he isn't the biggest player, but his skills are incredible. And I just couldn't wait to see him come over to North America and play for Edmonton.
Yeah, just too bad. I think if he would have been like 25 now and came over like a couple of years ago, he would have a much better shot at making an NHL team full on.
Yeah, I think that the league now is better set up for a smaller, gifted player like him. than it would have been, say, 10 to 12 years ago, when it was a much more physical, grinding league where there was more emphasis put on cycling the puck down low as opposed to letting the skill shine through a little more. So yeah, it's like you said. I mean, it is a better league now for smaller guys like him. And yeah, maybe he was just 10 years too early.
Yeah. So, and just as he started playing in the NHL, the first season of Oil Change aired, and that's what really got me hooked and interested in Edmonton. I really enjoy the behind the scenes look, and maybe not the production value wasn't maybe the greatest on Oil Change, but still had a lot of interesting moments where you could be in the room in the draft and everything. So that's what was the tipping point for me.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing with Oil Change is that the team didn't change as much as they would have hoped that they would have.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was interesting, like you said, to see a little behind the scenes of how things were going at the draft when they were picking Taylor Hall first overall, and just kind of what went on during that period of time. And I think they ran it for 4 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, right up until
something like that.
I'm pretty sure the last episode was when Ryan Smith retired in 2014.
Oh, that's right.
So I mean, it's really cool to look back on. I haven't watched it in several years, but no, I enjoyed it when it was on. But like I said, it's just too bad that the team didn't make more of a change as the documentary was sort of leaning towards doing. But yeah, that's interesting how you became an Oilers fan that way. Do you still follow the SHL quite a bit though? Like, do you go to games?
I do, but as I was saying, I live in Stockholm, and it's quite far from the team I grew up watching. So I go when they come here. That's a couple of times a year, and if I have time when we go back home. But actually, that team, Luleå Hockey, is in the finals right now. So it's
nice.
2-2 in best of 7, and actually, if Luleå wins it, the MVP of the playoff is Linus Ullmark.
Really?
He returned back from his. He played in Russia. He played in Switzerland.
He was playing in Switzerland. I was going to say that. I think I remember him playing in Switzerland for a while.
Yep. So this is his first year back, and he's 34, 35.
And most of the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, he's been dominating in the playoffs, and so he's the for sure MVP if they win it.
Yeah, I've heard that he's had quite a bit of success over in the various European leagues, and most of the leagues try to wrap up around this time of year so that all the players are available to play in the World Championships in May, right?
Yeah.
Is it a big deal, the World Championship in Sweden? Like, do you hear about it quite a bit on TV and in the sports news?
Yeah, it takes up all the sports news because of the SHL is over when they started. So all the hockey, it's a little bit of NHL, but mostly the World Cup. So yeah, it's big.
And I'm trying to remember, I think Sweden won a gold medal at the Worlds. Was it in 2014 or 2015?
Yeah, they beat Canada, right?
I think they won in the mid 2010s. Just tell me, what was that sort of like when Sweden won that, or even back in 2006 when they won the gold medal at the Olympics? I mean, that must have been even a bigger deal.
Yeah, people go out in the streets when the team return back home. They just fill an entire area in Stockholm and have a huge celebration, and various artists plays, and it's so much people going bonkers for it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. I remember when Canada won gold in 2010, and even before that in 2002. It was just it was like a national celebration from coast to coast. So I figure it would be the exact same in Sweden, which is another hockey mad country. You kind of talked about Omark being one of the first Oilers players that you really followed. Who are some of your other favorite Oilers players of all time?
Well, the first like jersey I got was Taylor Hall. So he was the player I really followed. But before then, it's not that much really. Before then, I mostly followed the Swedish guys in various teams, and especially growing up, Peter Forsberg, Mats Sundin, Niklas Lidström. Those the stars on various teams. But I don't really have a favorite Oiler player growing up.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like you said, going back to 10 years ago or so, 12 years ago when you were first getting into it, it's not like you were cheering for the team, say, in the Ryan Smith or Ales Hemsky days before that. Like that's when a lot of the people in my age group growing up, those were sort of their idols and those heroes. But for a whole new generation now, there's the McDavids and the Dreisaitl's and the Nugent Hopkins. So I mean, there's different players for every age group. I want to just talk about some Swedish players who are in the Oilers, particularly Philip Broberg. He's a young, up-and-coming top prospect for the Oilers organization. Have you ever had the chance to watch him play live, and what do you think about the player overall?
I haven't actually seen him live. He played down in not the SHL, in Allsvenskan before he played his 1 year in Skellefteå, which is in SHL. And that was during the COVID season, so I didn't really get to go to live hockey back then. I haven't seen him play live actually, but he's such an interesting prospect, and I'm pretty sure he will lock up a top 4 in Edmonton in 2 or 3 years.
Does it add some excitement for you though, for the Oilers to either draft a Swedish player or trade for a Swedish player? Does it not really matter to you where they come from?
Not now, no. Maybe when I first started, or so, just to have some Swedish guys, and I did enjoy having Klefbom and Adam Larsson. But I wouldn't say not now. Maybe if they would have traded for a superstar, or Philip Forsberg or someone like that, it would be pretty cool because it's Swedish. But
and Klefbom was such a popular player here too. I mean, can you imagine if he was healthy and playing on this team right now? As good as the Oilers are right now, adding a healthy Oscar Klefbom would take them even that much further, I believe.
Definitely. Then we would have been the favorite to come out of the West, maybe.
Exactly, at least to win the Pacific Division. But I think that having another top blue liner like him, I mean, just with Nurse and Klefbom on the blue line at their current ages, it would just take this team so much further. And no disrespect to the guys they have right now. I like Brett Kulak. I like Chris Russell for the role he plays, but Klefbom was such a difference maker for this hockey club, and it's a real shame that he's missed the past 2 seasons now, and it looks like his career might be over.
Yeah, I think it is. No, as you're saying, imagine if Duncan Keith and Bouchard were the third pairing, and we had Clef and Adam Larsson as a second pairing.
And as good as Keith and Bouchard are, if you were able to even drop them down, like you said, to the third pairing and have that much more talent, that's when this team would really be deep on the back end. The NHL hosted the 2018 NHL Global Series in Sweden where the Oilers played the New Jersey Devils. Did you have a chance to go see that game? And if so, what was it like to watch your favorite NHL team in your home country?
I did actually. We flew from, me and my wife took a weekend in Gothenburg. So it was a really cool experience. The game itself was kind of like dull.
Yeah, I think they lost 5-2.
Yeah. And the crowd wasn't like super into the game, except for the Canadian fans that had made the trip. Yeah, exactly. But the whole like experience and outside the arena where they had put all this stuff to do and hockey memorabilia to go see and stuff. So the whole weekend was super cool, but the game itself was kind of boring.
Yeah. Well, I thought you might have, because I saw your profile picture on Twitter and you're wearing your Oilers jersey at a game, but you can't really see what's in the background. And I was wondering, I said, I wonder if that was at the Global Series game. So I had to ask you that.
It's not actually. It's from Rogers.
Oh, that isn't.
Place. Yeah.
Okay, well, you beat me to my next question. I was going to say, have you ever had the chance to come to Edmonton for a game, or do you plan to in the future? But now that I know you've come, when did you come over to Canada for the first time to see the Oilers play? And do you remember who it was against, how many games you saw when you were here?
Yeah, it was actually just a couple of weeks after the Global Series.
Oh, wow.
I made the travel with a bunch of different guys from Sweden through a hockey site here called Hockey Sverige. There was like Hockey Sverige together with Oilers Nation that had this trip. So we made 20 or so guys to go see 3 games. And so we saw Nashville, Pittsburgh, and Washington. So 3 really good games.
And that would have been in the 2018-19 series. Was there any of the games that stood out to you the most that was your favorite one?
Well, the last one against Washington we won, so that stood out, and Evan Bouchard scored his first.
I remember the
goal.
game.
Yeah, and
the slap shot from the point, and I think that was actually his last game before they sent him back to junior.
I think so too. Yeah, and the game before against Pittsburgh was also a super good game. We lost in OT.
I think that was the game where Crosby deked out Ryan Strome.
Yeah, and just such an amazing goal to have been in the building to see, and I think I will like always remember that goal, even though we lost.
Well, I mean, aside from seeing your favorite team, you also had the chance to watch Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin in those 2 games. So it's not like you didn't get to see any superstars while you were here.
No, exactly. And no, it was an amazing trip, and we were treated like royalties from everyone we met, and the whole city of Edmonton just like took us in. It was amazing.
That's awesome, man. And the final thing I just wanted to ask you is what your favorite memory of watching the Oilers is. But you listed quite a few over the last few minutes. Is there one that sticks out above all the rest as your best memory watching the team, either on TV or live in person?
Well, I think the overtime win in the playoffs, 17 against the Sharks.
David Desharnais.
Yeah, exactly.
What a pass by Draisaitl to see him streaking in from the point and buried at top shelf. That I think that game, since the 2006 playoff run, that might be one of, if not the most memorable playoff goal that's been scored by the Oilers.
Yeah. so fun. I was commuting to work, so I watched the game and the overtime on my phone.
Oh, nice.
I was in the subway and like cheering them on and like going bananas when they scored.
Were you going crazy on the subway and everyone's wondering what's going on?
This guy, like, early in the morning, what's he up to? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess because I mean, that was in, I think it was double overtime, wasn't it?
I don't remember, actually.
But it must have been, like you said, because of the time difference. It would have been an early morning game for you in Sweden.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty memorable goal. But let's hope that there's going to be a few more of those this spring in the 2022 playoffs now.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I really appreciate you sharing that, man. And now let's talk about Game 1 between the Oilers and Kings on Monday night. I was in Edmonton for that game, and it was an incredible experience to finally attend my first live Oilers playoff game, even though we didn't get the result we were looking for. The Oilers fell behind 2-0 in the first period, but they battled back to tie the game 3-3 before the end of the second. Unfortunately, though, Mike Smith misplayed the puck with just over 5 minutes left on the clock, and that ultimately cost the Oilers the game as they dropped a 4-3 decision to LA. Kim, a lot of Oilers fans were understandably frustrated with Smith for his late game blunder, myself included. But I still thought the Oilers played fairly well overall, and they really took over the game in the second period with tons of shots and a couple power play goals. Did you think the Oilers should have gone back to Smith for Game 2, or were you wanting Mikko Koskinen to replace him after that late game mistake that he made?
No, I think Smith was the right choice, obviously, because we all know what happened. But I thought Smith was the right choice. He's been like this his whole career. Like, everyone says he's a battler and everything, but it was pretty obvious. Like, he would go in and have a great game.
Yeah, and I mean, Smith is really like a third defenseman with his puck-moving ability.
Yeah.
And that's a major asset against a hard forechecking team like the Kings. And, you know, when you play a high-risk, high-reward style like he does, sometimes the puck ends up in the back of your own net. And unfortunately for the Oilers, it happened at the worst possible time. But I still think that you can't hang that entire game on Mike Smith. Like, yes, you would have liked that third goal from Brendan Lemieux to not have gone in. Like, the Oilers worked so hard to tie the game 2-2, and then just under 2 minutes later, the Kings are back in front 3-2. I just think, that's a save you had to get, but really it wasn't all on him. They looked like they just weren't ready for the moment from the jump. You know, they gave up a scoring chance early on, and it just looked like there was a lot of nervous energy. And maybe that's from 2 straight years of getting bounced in the first round when they were the favorite, that there was a lot of pressure to come in and make sure that they win a series this year. But it just, it looked like they weren't ready for Game 1, and they, like we said, they fell behind early and had to really scratch and claw to get back into it, and they did. It's just that the end result wasn't what they were looking for after a disappointing play by Smith.
Yeah, and as you were saying, he can't give up that third goal. That's the major fault.
Well, it killed their momentum, right? I mean,
the
building was electric after Kyler Yamamoto redirected that Duncan Keith slap shot. So now Connor McDavid scored that beautiful goal late in the first period, I think with 42 seconds left.
Yeah, such an important goal.
And I had such a great view of that goal because he was skating down my side of the ice. And from where he released the shot, it was almost straight below me. So I had a perfect view for that goal. And that's something that I'll always remember, that he scored it not only at the end of the ice where my seat was, but coming down the right wing where I was seated. But just, like we said, Yamamoto then scores to tie it, and unfortunately they give it right back. And then, of course, the Oilers continue to put on the pressure, and Leon Draisaitl also scores a power play goal to tie it 3-3. So going into the third period, I felt pretty confident that the Oilers had a chance to come back and win this game. And
Yeah,
it was really looking like the game was going to go to overtime, wasn't it?
yeah, definitely. Those like minutes before Smith's mistake, they were, yeah, it felt like the game had gone into some sort of like nothing much happening. They're like, don't want to make a mistake, and obviously Smith had to go out and do that. But
And I
yeah,
think one of the most disappointing things is that he had two options where he could have passed the puck. He had Bouchard on one side and Duncan Keith on the other. And instead of making the easy pass to one of the defensemen where they could have just sent the puck up along the boards and got it out, he chose to send it right up the middle of the ice where it was picked off. And then he had to dive back to make an incredible save. Yeah. But unfortunately, it still ends up with a redirected shot into the back of the net by Philip Deneau. And that was just such a killer. I felt like, you know, that sucked all the momentum and energy out of the building. And the Oilers, you know, give them credit. They didn't give up until the very end, but it just they couldn't get that one last goal they needed to send it to OT.
Yeah, no, but Smith, he wanted to be a hero, or he felt that Quick were doing amazing saves on the other end, and he gave up that lousy third goal. He wanted to make something happen and to stand out. And
sometimes when you do that, it's a costly error, and it was for the Oilers. All right, I want to get your thoughts on Darnell Nurse now. And look, I'm a big fan of his, but he had a really tough start to game one. And, you know, he looked like he hadn't fully recovered from the lower body injury he suffered 10 days earlier. He was caught out of position on the first play of the game, which led to a scoring chance for the Kings, and he failed to cover the slot on their first goal. Do you think it was the right decision for Nurse to play in game one, or should he have waited a little longer until he was back to 100% before playing?
No, I think it was the right decision. Even though, as you were saying, some of the plays was not the Nurse were used to, but I feel much more confident with Nurse playing on like 80% of his abilities than giving those minutes to someone else and having Chris Russell playing much more than he did.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that stood out to me right away is his skating. Like, Darnell Nurse is one of the fastest skaters on the team. He's one of the best skating defensemen in the NHL, but you could see that he wasn't able to get up to the speed that he normally is. And look, Nurse is an ultra competitive guy, and he obviously never wants to miss a single game, especially a playoff game, unless he absolutely can't go. But you could just tell that there was some rust in his game after missing the last 4 games of the regular season. Yeah. And even though sorry, go ahead.
No, even getting up from some place when he like fell over and such, he looked like it took him a while to get up. So you could definitely see that it was bothering him.
Exactly. And, you know, even though he played about 5 minutes fewer than his season average in game one, he still played the most minutes of any Oilers defenseman. So with 7 defensemen dressed, including 3 other left shot guys, I would have played Nurse, but cut down his ice time even more just to ease him back into the lineup. Brett Kulak and Chris Russell took on more minutes while Nurse was out of the lineup. And I think you could have elevated them and sort of given Nurse a little bit of an easier matchups to start. Same with Duncan Keith. Like, there's no reason he couldn't have played a few extra minutes just to cut down on Nurse a bit, because coming back from injury and having to go right back to being the number one defenseman, I mean, that's a tough position to be put in for anyone.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and especially since Duncan Keith and Brent Kulak has been really good
they have
lately. Yeah.
I think that
So
Duncan
definitely.
Keith has been quite impressive so far in the playoffs. And when the Oilers traded for him last summer, there were some people who didn't like the move to bring him in. They thought, he makes too much money. The Oilers didn't get the Blackhawks to retain any salary on him. And look, he isn't the player that he was 5 years ago. But I think defensively, he's still all right, and his skating ability and passing ability is still quite strong. So this is the time of year when they really need him to step up. And you look at all the deep playoff runs that Duncan Keith has been on in his career. This is the time when he is going to be most valuable to the Oilers and can sort of not only impart some wisdom and experience from having been to the Stanley Cup final several times, but he was the top pairing defenseman on all those deep runs as well. And even though he's not that guy anymore, he knows what it takes to win in the playoffs. So I would expect that as good as he was in the regular season, I think that he's going to take his game up even another couple notches as we keep going here in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think so too, and just the value of having him next to Evan Bouchard, which is a playoff rookie because he didn't get to play last year. So
and that was a tough situation too. I mean, it was really a numbers game. I do think they should have found a way to fit him into the lineup more. Obviously, they still had Ethan Bear at the time, and Bear was ahead of him on the depth chart. Now, and look how well Bouchard has played so far. I think I really like that pairing of him and Duncan Keith because you've got this one veteran defenseman who's 38 years old and has played 1,300 games in the NHL, and then you've got a guy like Evan Bouchard who is 22 and hasn't even played 100 games. I mean, this was really his first full NHL season this year, and he was able to score over 40 points. I think the future is so bright for him, but he's still a young defenseman, and for all intents and purposes, he's a rookie. And there's going to be some rookie mistakes along the way, but you hope that having a guy like Duncan Keith to insulate him a little bit will, really help him going forward here too.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're playing, as I said, really good right now. So I think that's a pairing to keep getting more minutes if Nurse isn't 100%.
Did anyone else stand out for you in game one? Who else do you think played really well despite the loss?
Well, I actually think no one really stood out. It was a good team effort. I think they could have won that game easily if it wasn't for like some mistakes in the defensive zone. So Ryan McLeod was impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to say someone, it's definitely him.
I think McLeod is getting better each and every game. He's just you can see him continuing to grow and become a better player. And he's another guy like Bouchard who's only 22, and I think those guys are big parts of the Oilers' future. And as impressive as McLeod was this year, he's only going to continue to get better and really develop into possibly being a top third line center for the Oilers, and maybe he'll even get moved up to play on the wing. Like he can moonlight in the top six on the wing if he has to, but he could really be one of the better third line centers in the league if he continues at this progression.
Yeah, you just need to like get into better scoring positions and find the back of the net a bit more.
And we're seeing the scoring touch start to come from him in the second half of the season here. But like you said, he can take that aspect of his game up even more. But he's aside from Connor McDavid, he's the second best skater on the team.
Yeah, definitely.
And he might not have the puck skills that Connor does, but the way he's able to transport the puck from his own end into the offensive end. I mean, if you can have a guy who can make effortless zone entries like that. That's so valuable in your bottom six.
Yeah, and he looks really good on the second power play as well, doing the McDavid entry and also distributing the puck really good.
Oh, for sure. And, I also think Connor McDavid obviously had a stellar game in game one. I mean, the goal he scored was incredible down the rush, just to get his team back in it. Like he almost said, I'm going to single-handedly get the Oilers back into this game. And then he also added an assist on Leon Draisaitl's power play goal. And just, he was dangerous all night. But another guy who really stood out to me was Kyler Yamamoto. He for a small player, he doesn't back down from anyone. He's always willing to mix it up in the corners and, battle for loose pucks in front of the net. And he's just fearless when he gets into those board battles. He, like we said, he scored a goal. He also had an assist. I just think that was a really impressive game from him, because last year he kind of was pretty quiet in the playoffs. So for him to sort of make a statement that he's not going to let that happen again, I think that was big for him.
Yeah, and talk about like an up and down season from Yams. He was so quiet.
Well, he started really quiet. I don't think he had a goal for the first, was it 12 or 13 games? And then once he got rolling, it started to take off from there. And he ultimately ended up with 20 goals and 41 points, which is, half a point a game pace. So he definitely got better as the season went on. And I think that he has the potential to be a 50-plus point player. He's still only 23, and I think that aspect of his game will continue to get there. But it's just, you love to see a guy who's never willing to, or never afraid to back down from a challenge. And he plays bigger than he is.
Yeah, definitely. He's just ferocious. He must be so hard to play against. So he definitely had a great first game as well, as you were saying.
For sure. Well, let's look at.
Do you like him?
Sorry, what's?
Do you like him more with McDavid line or with Draisaitl?
I think that he does work well with McDavid when he gets to play there, but I think that he should play with Draisaitl for the most part. I like McDavid with Puljujarvi and Draisaitl with Yamamoto. We saw 2 years ago how well Yamamoto clicked on that line with Nugent Hopkins and Draisaitl. And even though Nugent Hopkins has moved back to center now, I think there's still just a lot of chemistry between Draisaitl and Yamamoto, so I would keep them together.
Yeah. Same for me. I think that's our optimal lineup right now, to have Yamamoto with Draisaitl.
Oh, agreed. All right, let's talk about game 2 now. And this was a much more positive result. Evander Kane scored 2 third-period goals, and Mike Smith turned aside all 30 shots he faced to propel the Oilers to a dominant 6-0 victory and even the series at 1. Kim, just what can you say about Evander Kane stepping up in the third period? Like I said, scoring 2 big goals to sort of seal the deal for Edmonton.
Yeah, he's been such a big part of this team since he came in, and this is what he does. He scores goals, and I don't know about his expected goals or all the statistics behind it, but he looks really, really good up there, and I do really hope we can find a way to keep him.
I think outside of Leon Draisaitl, Kane is the best winger that McDavid has ever had. Yeah. And you look at some of the guys that he's had success with. Connor has played well with sort of big, rugged forwards like Milan Lucic for a short period of time, and Patrick Maroon for 1 season. But Evander Kane is a big, strong power forward who also has speed and more scoring touch than either of those guys had. And if Patrick Maroon can score 27 goals playing on McDavid's line, what could Evander Kane do in a full season? He had 22 goals in just half a season. Yeah. He was on pace for over 40. Now, there's no guarantee that if he comes back next year that he's going to score 40 goals, but I also wouldn't bet against it because he's playing with the best playmaker in the league in the prime of his career. I think Connor could put up over 130 points next year. So yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Kane ended up scoring 40 if he sticks around.
Yeah, and you know what really surprised me is when he goes out there with 30 or 40 seconds left on the box play with McDavid.
I mean, and look at he isn't always on the first power play unit, but when the second unit gets out there, even for a short period of time, Kane is almost always on that unit. There was a few times when they had injuries that he started as the net front guy on the first power play unit, but for the most part, he's been a second power play unit guy, and in limited power play time, he's scoring goals there. So it just shows you this is an effective player, and the majority of his 22 goals came at 5-on-5. But this is a player who is the Oilers have needed for so long. They severely were lacking talent on the wings, and when you're able to pick up Zach Hyman in the offseason and Evander Kane in the middle of the season, now you've added two excellent left wingers that you didn't have a year ago.
Yeah, and it's been such a big difference from last year, as you were saying. They make all the difference in the world just being hard to play against both of those guys, and it's such a big difference. And I mean, Kane can both obviously score. His second goal last night on the power play was an amazing shot, but also pass the puck. I know when he first came in, he had those first couple of games adjusting and getting up to speed, and I thought his passing game were a bit off and his skating were slow and such. But since
which was understandable too, because he missed almost 10 months without playing in the NHL from the time the regular season ended with the Sharks all the way to January, halfway through the following season when he was bought out and eventually picked up by the Oilers. But speaking of his line mate, McDavid, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. He had another great game in Game 2, picking up another 2 assists on Draisaitl and Puljujarvi's goals. But what impressed me about McDavid the most in Game 2 wasn't his offensive production. It was how physical he was. He had 4 hits in the game, and you can start to see that he started to add this new element to his game where he is using his speed to win races to pucks. And if that means he has to knock someone over to get there, he hit a few guys down to the ice. And that's not something we're used to seeing from McDavid. And I'm not saying he has to play a bruising style night after night. I don't think that your franchise player necessarily has to do that, but it is good to see that he isn't afraid to mix it up once in a while and confront someone and do that.
Yeah, and this season he's becoming such a complete player with the physicality, as you were saying, but also the defensive side of the puck, face-offs.
Yeah, his face-off percentage was actually better than Draisaitl's this year, which was really surprising to me.
Yeah. So he really picked it up even further. So it looks really good, and if he can keep up being physical against those defenders of LA, and they will wear down.
And there's some big matchups in this series. One thing that people talked about going into this series was McDavid and Draisaitl facing off against Kopitar and Danault. And the Kings' top two centers got the better of the Oilers' top two centers in game one, but Edmonton really responded in game two like they weren't going to let that happen again, especially on home ice. As the series goes back to LA now, do you think that the Kings are going to be hard matching even more against the Oilers and really trying to focus on McDavid?
I do. And Todd is a hard line matching coach, and he's gonna do it even more since now can have last change. So I do it. That's why I'm thinking it's better for us to go back to 11-7 next game, just to be able to create mismatches there and put maybe McDavid out with Cassian, and which other player is the 11th guy.
Yeah, and I could see them doing that as well, just to have the one extra defenseman, and then you could have McDavid rotate through, having him double shift with the fourth line or third line every once in a while. The thing that I think is really impressive, though, the Oilers scored 6 goals in game 2, and McDavid only had a point on 2 of them. So you're really starting to see the depth scoring come through in the big moments more than we've seen in the past. So even if they do try to really focus on shutting down McDavid, I feel like I'm more confident than I've ever been that the third line and the fourth line and even Draisaitl's line will be able to come through and give them some offense that they're not used to getting from those units.
Yeah, and that's what we've been seeing since Woodcroft took over. Just different lines going out there every night and being the best line of the night. It's not always the McDavid line that has to do all the work. So and that's really encouraging.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about the special teams, though. The Oilers scored 2 power play goals in the game. They also got a shorthanded goal from Darnell Nurse, who, we talked about in game 1, didn't have his best game, but I thought really stepped up in game 2 and looked a lot better. The Kings aren't a great special teams club. I believe they had the 3rd worst power play in the league this year, and they were also a bottom 10 team on the penalty kill, whereas the Oilers are a very strong special teams club, especially with their power play. I mean, they have as deadly a power play as there is in the NHL, and the penalty kill improved a lot under Jay Woodcroft as well in the last 3 months of the season. We're starting to see the refs also call more penalties than we're used to seeing the past couple of years in the playoffs. Do you think that if this trend continues, that the Oilers have a much better chance to win in the series than if they were going to have to get it done at 5-on-5?
Well, yes, because we're seeing the difference right now. When we're getting the power play, we can score goals, and the power play, both units look sharp and ready and have scored. So that's really good. But also the box play units have been outstanding.
Well, yeah, I mean, having one of the top power plays in the league go up against one of the bottom penalty kills, that favors the Oilers in a major way. But even though, like I was saying, if they keep getting more opportunities with the man advantage, the Oilers should win. I still think that they have improved enough at 5-on-5 that they don't need to rely just on the power play to win games. Whereas in the past, that was kind of the reputation that they had, is that this was a team that really leaned heavily on their superstars and having a close to 50% power play earlier in the season in order to win games that maybe they didn't deserve to win. Now I feel like that they can go into a game and feel like, well, if we don't get a bunch of power plays, we still have a good shot to win tonight.
Yeah, definitely. They, as you were saying, the 5-on-5 play is looking much better now than at the start of the season. So I feel confident, even if even if we don't have a special teams at all, that we're a better 5-on-5 team than LA.
Yeah, agreed. And of course, at the other end of the ice, Mike Smith, as I mentioned, posted a shutout. He became one of only 6 goalies in NHL history over the age of 40 to record a shutout in the playoffs. Kim, after watching how well Smith played in a response game after a very disappointing end to game 1, how much more confident are you in Mike Smith going forward here?
I am confident in his abilities, and I do feel that the team plays a much better defensively with him in net because of the way he handles the puck and such. What I'm worried about is if this series goes to 7 games, and if we look onwards from that, do Mike Smith, I mean, as you were saying, he's 40 years old. Can he play all the games? How is his injury status going to be if he plays like 7 games here and go to maybe another series? So I'm wondering if we're maybe gonna try to rest him for one of the LA games in LA.
And I wouldn't do that, honestly. I mean, during the regular season, I think the Oilers were a tandem goaltending team. And they could sort of split the starts between Koskinen and Mike Smith. We've seen that for a few years now. But come playoff time, I really think you need to just ride with one goalie. And because Smith missed so much time due to injury this season, I think he's well rested. Like he hasn't been overworked. He only played 28 games this season. So he should have lots of gas in the tank and be able to go on a deep run if this team can continue to put the puck in the net and give him the run support that he needs. But really, I think he's super motivated to take the best chance he can to win a Stanley Cup here because, as we said, at age 40, he doesn't have a lot of cracks at it left. Yeah. So, with where this team is at and how well they're playing, this might be his last really good shot to get there. Now, he is under contract for next season too, but we don't know if he's going to be the starting goalie next year. No. So I have a feeling that he's going to want to seize this opportunity and, at least win a round and hopefully further.
Yeah. As you were saying, I just hope his health will hold up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not super confident that it will over a long, hard series. But on the other hand, I think you have to dragging out of the net to get him to leave it to Koskinen. So yeah, he will be in there for sure.
Definitely. And as the series shifts to LA for Game 3 now, who would you like to see step up even more and really have a stellar effort as the series goes on the road?
I would like to get Hyman on the scoreboard a bit more, and I do really hope that Puljujärvi keeps on scoring, so he just can shut
that was
up
a great
some
shot
people in the media. Yeah,
and look, I know he takes some flack from the media for his lack of scoring, but Jesse Puljujärvi does so many good things. He hasn't scored as many goals as we would like to see, but he does a lot of dirty work for McDavid in the corner. He frees up pucks. He extends plays. He's very strong defensively. As soon as he can start to finish a few more of the point blank chances that he gets, he's going to be an undisputed top line winger in the league. I think that he already is at the very least a top 6 forward, but he'll leave no doubt that he's a top line winger if he can, become at least a 20 goal scorer. And I think that he does have the potential to score 20 to 25 goals next season.
I do as well. I think it's mostly a confident thing. when he had those missed opportunities and stuff. I think it got into his head a bit.
Yeah,
and he also said that in the Finnish newspapers. So
yeah, every once in a while I seem to see an interview that he's given with a Finnish news outlet, and then it gets translated back to English, and sometimes something can get misconstrued about how he phrased it. But I don't know. I think that he's such a big part of this team, and I hope that the Oilers will be able to keep him around this summer. But as for Zach Hyman, like you said, he works so hard every shift. You know, you never have to question the effort that Zach Hyman is going to give you. I would like to see him get on the scoreboard too. I think he's had some chances, and he's such a dangerous player on the penalty kill too. He scored a couple shorthanded goals this season, and I really like when he's out there with Nugent Hopkins. I think those two can be dangerous.
They have
down a man.
Really good connection there. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of time before he finds the twine and gets his first goal of the series here. But yeah, I think I agree with you on that. Hyman could be a guy that that steps up. And Nugent Hopkins, I didn't think that he had the best first game, but in the second game he looked a little bit better. And I think that even though he's not quite at the top of his game yet, he's progressing, and I think that we're going to have a breakout performance from him coming up here too.
Yeah, hopefully. Would you keep the third line intact?
Yeah, I think I would. I sometimes wish that Nugent Hopkins had a little more skill to play with, and that's no disrespect to Derek Ryan. Derek Ryan is, a very smart, understated two-way player. And he does well on draws and on the penalty kill as well. But Nugent Hopkins doesn't have the talent that he's used to playing with down on the third line. And maybe he will next year when a guy like Dylan Holloway arrives. Then he'll have another top young player to play with. But for right now, he kind of has to get a little bit done on his own, although he still is on the top power play unit. Let's not forget that. So he still does get to play with McDavid and Draisaitl, and he's always been a better power play player than an even strength player, going all the way back to junior when he played for the Red Deer Rebels. He really thrives with the man advantage, where he's able to use his skill and his smarts to generate offense. So maybe he'll be chipping in some assists on the power play, but he's a guy who you can throw it on the ice in any situation and feel good about it.
Definitely. I would like to see him score some more. But as you were saying on the power play, he's such a big part of that. And when he was injured for a while there, the power play didn't really look the same.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Yamamoto kind of replaced him for a while, but there was also a time when Puljujarvi was out, and Yamamoto and Evander Kane replaced Nugent Hopkins and Puljujarvi on the first power play unit, and it still had some success, but it's just before McDavid came to Edmonton, Nugent Hopkins ran the power play, and now that McDavid's there, the whole power play runs through him. But it's still so helpful to have a guy with as much skill as Nugent Hopkins on the other half wall, setting up plays. And he can also go down in the bumper position right below the goal line. He does a great job of sometimes getting passes over to Draisaitl in the slot, because they're always looking for that cross-ice pass from McDavid. Sometimes if it comes from another passing option, it can catch teams off guard. So yeah, I think that he does a lot of his best work there. I also want to ask you about Josh Archibald. He's now gained clearance to travel to the United States and play on the road. He wasn't able to all this season because he was unvaccinated. But now, because of his heart condition, I guess they can't force him to get the vaccine, and he's going to be able to play down there. Look, despite what people might think about him as a result of, some of his personal choices as well as a bad penalty that he took in the playoffs last year that led to an unfortunate goal against the Winnipeg Jets. I think that Josh Archibald still brings something to this team. He's so tenacious on the forecheck. He hits everything in sight, and he can chip in an occasion. He hasn't yet this year, but he only played, I think, 7 games in the regular season. So he's missed a lot of time. But I really do think he brings something to the lineup. What about you?
Yeah, I do. I wasn't impressed at all during his games in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Understandable because he hadn't played or even practiced that much, but and I wasn't like super happy about him coming into the lineup for game 2. But I was really impressed with his play, and I absolutely thought he brought something to the team, and I do hope he gets into the next game.
Yeah, and that was the only thing that they really changed from game 1 to game 2 is going from 11-7 to 12-6 by inserting Archibald in. But you were saying that you were thinking that maybe they should go back to 11-7 for game 3, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just to get the mismatch when LA tries to line match.
So do you have an idea of who you would take out of the lineup? Because I'm guessing you would want to keep Archibald in then.
Yeah, it's hard. It's either Archibald or Cassian, and they have like a similar style. So I don't really know.
It's hard to take Cassian out either because even though he's not putting the puck in the net right now, you just look at he's like a wrecking ball out there. And very similar to what I just said about Archibald, he hits everything in sight. He's always looking to line someone up for that huge open ice hit. He just missed. I don't know if you noticed that too. There were a couple times where he had someone in his sights and it looked like he was going to level the boom and just barely missed at the last second. Yeah. But I have a feeling he's going to catch someone in one of the next few games and just absolutely annihilate them. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's coming. And when you're playing against a team that likes to forecheck as much as the Kings do, it's good to have someone who can kind of give that physicality back to them and show that we're not going to get pushed around.
Yeah, definitely. I think as the game 2 wore on, all the physicality war on the LA defenders.
Yeah.
So, and if we can keep on doing that throughout the series, it will be they won't hold up. We will be able to catch them off guard and such. So I think it's super important to just keep on doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I mean, and like we said, everyone is starting to hit now. You're starting to see guys like McDavid even play a little more physical than we're used to. Yamamoto, we said isn't the biggest guy in the world, but he doesn't back down from anyone. So yeah, that's what it takes to win in the playoffs. You have to be willing to play that physical style. And last year when the Oilers played the Jets, we can talk about all the penalties that weren't called, but at the same time, the Jets played a style that wasn't a great match for the Oilers. The Oilers like to trade chances with teams and really, use their skill to dominate. And it wasn't a good matchup for them. The Jets just sort of played a more physical style than the Oilers wanted to, and that had a big impact on the series.
It did. And we were out-goalied and out.
We were out-goalied too. I mean, Connor Hellebuck was the MVP of that series. Yeah. And Mike Smith wasn't bad in the playoffs last year. He lost all 4 games, but realistically, as good as he played, the reason that they lost wasn't because of him. They lost because Connor Hellebuck was just absolutely incredible in that entire series. The Oilers, they couldn't muster very much offense at all on him, and it really had nothing to do with Smith.
No, none whatsoever.
Well, Kim, before I let you go here, I just want to get a prediction from you. I know we're 2 games into the series now, but I'm guessing you think the Oilers are going to win. But how many games do you think they close it out in?
I think we'll split here in LA, and then we'll win 2 out. So 4-2, 6 games.
I think that's a pretty good prediction. I guessed, or I predicted 5 games before the series. So the Oilers need to win 4 straight to make me look smart. But if not, I think 6 games is probably a safer bet that that will come true. Before I let you go now, where can people find you on Twitter?
My Twitter handle is Ulfstrom. I think it's pretty hard to say, so I guess you can write it in your podcast information if people want to find me.
We will tag you in it for sure, so no worries there.
Perfect.
Well, man, listen, thanks so much again for being on the show. It was great to finally talk to you. We followed each other for a while, but this was the first time we've actually been able to have a conversation and talk some Oilers. So I'm grateful that you were able to make the time to do this, and hopefully you'll be back on the show again someday.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Always welcome. All right, have a good night, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so for Kim Ulfstrom, I'm Eric Friesen. This has been the 99 Forever podcast. We're out.